Good morning, everyone. So today it's about Agile methodologies. This is in the PM track. But before going to the Agile methodologies, let's talk about methodologies that are in the industry today, and then let's proceed with the Agile methodologies. So in the methodologies in the today's presentation, we have traditional sequential methodologies, that is Waterfall methodology, critical path method, critical chain project management, and then we have PMI PMBOK method, and then we'll go to the Agile family, that is Agile, Scrum, Kanban, and then we have scaled Agile framework. And moving on to the Waterfall methodology, this is the traditional method for managing projects, and it is the simplest to understand. This model was originated in the manufacturing and construction industries. It was created in a time when no formal software development methodologies existed, and this hardware-oriented model was simply adapted to the software development. And this progress is seen in the waterfall methodology is seen as a flowing steadily downwards like a waterfall, as the name suggests, through the phases of requirements, design, implementation, verification, and maintenance. It sequences the tasks that lead to the final deliverable, and the project team has to work in order to achieve the final deliverable. So everything is in sequence. Every step is pre-planned and it's laid down in the proper sequence. And in the waterfall methodology, one task must be completed before the next one begins. And there's this connected sequence of items that adds up to the overall deliverable. And if there is any changes to the customer's needs or priorities, that will, if there's any change requirements, it will disrupt the sequence of the task, and it is very difficult to manage. So I have put up some advantages and disadvantages in the waterfall methodology. So as I said, it is very easy to explain to the users and clients, and it is very easy to understand because of its structural approach. And the stages and the activities are well defined, and it helps to plan the project because it has lots of documentation that we have to do in the waterfall methodology. The disadvantages are that it assumes that the requirements of the system can be frozen, which is not. We have so many change requirements when we are doing a project. So like when we are doing the project, when we get the change requirements, it is very difficult to go back into the previous phase, because once it is finished in the waterfall methodology. So it is very little flexibility, and adjusting scope is very difficult, and also it is very expensive in the waterfall methodology. Moving on to the critical path methodology. So this critical path method was developed in 1950s by a person called DuPont, and it was first used in the missile defense construction projects. Since that time, the CPM, the critical path method, has been adapted to other fields, including hardware and software product research and development. The initial critical path method was used for managing plant maintenance projects, but even though it was used in plant maintenance projects, it was developed like plant maintenance projects are construction work. This method can be used in any project that has independent activities. And these CPM is ideally suited for projects that consist of numerous activities that interact in the environment in a complex manner. So the critical path, the definition of the critical path is the sequential activities from start to the end of the project, and the critical path method is based on the mathematical calculations, and it is used for scheduling the project activities. This method is based on the concept that there are some tasks that you can't start until the previous one has been finished. And when you string these dependent tasks together from start to finish, you can plot the critical path. And identifying, focusing on this critical path allows the project managers and even the project teams to prioritize the work and allocate resources to that work to get the most important work done, and reschedule the lower priority tasks, because then we can have the prioritization of the work. And if any changes needed to be done to the project schedule, because when the change requirements come in, when we have to make changes, then when we are making the changes, we can do the changes without delaying the end results. That is one plus point in critical path methodology. So in here also I have discussed about some advantages and disadvantages of critical path methodology. In the advantages, it determines the expected project completion date, and because we have a exact completion date, we can visualize what has to be done. And it shows which tasks must be coordinated to avoid resource or timing conflicts. Because the critical path is analyzed, we know what is the most critical activities in the path, and determines the dates on which the task may be started or must be started if the project is to stay in schedule. Because we can visualize the project in a sheet so that we know what has to be done and what has like the prioritization basically, and the parallel activities we can complete them parallelly. The disadvantages is that the accuracy depends on the estimates, because these estimates are done by the project team and they might not be 100% accurate, and it does not guarantee the success of the project because it solely depends on the estimates. Estimates are done by the project team, which is not 100% correct. And activities themselves may have tasks. So for example, task 1 have subtasks like task 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. In that case, the network diagram becomes complex. And when the network diagram is complex, it's very hard to track. So moving on to the critical chain project management. So this is also built on the CPM, that is critical path method, but it is derived from theory of constraints. So this is the method of planning and managing projects that emphasizes the resources in sense people, equipment, space. So these resources that is required to execute the project tasks. And it focuses on resources, availability and their dependencies, and then they deals with the uncertainties or the changes along all the task chain, and it adds the buffers to the task. So the main difference between CPM and critical chain project management is that it adds buffers, and these buffers play a major role in critical chain project management. It begins by building a project schedule and identify the most crucial tasks, which is same as the CPM, that need to be done, which is called the critical chain in this context, and it reserves resources to those high priority tasks. And as I said, it also builds buffers of time around these tasks into the project schedule, which is like the major role in the critical chain project management. And let's move on to the PMBOK PMI method. So PMBOK is the short name for Project Management Body of Knowledge. The project management body of knowledge describes project management practices that are common to most of the projects in the most of the time. And this PMBOK was published by the Project Management Institute, which was formed in USA in 1969. So PMBOK basically collects set processes, best practices, terminologies, and guidelines that are accepted as standards within the project management industry itself. PMBOK Guide provides project managers with guidelines and best practices, and it defines everything from the project lifecycle to project management strategies and concepts. It goes into detail on the various project management processes that interact and overlap throughout the project's lifecycle. PMBOK officially recognizes 47 project management processes, which can be broken down into 5 phases. So 5 phases as in like 5 process groups: initiating, planning, executing, controlling, and closing. If we go basically into each of those, in initiating, it's about creating the project charter, identifying the stakeholders, controlling the stakeholder engagement, and then stakeholder planning, the management, and everything. In the planning, we have to plan everything, determine the budget, create the WBS, the work breakdown structure, and then we have to define the scope as well. In the executing phase, we have to execute what we have created in the planning phase. We have to manage communications, conducting procurements and managing the project team, obviously, when we are executing the project. In the controlling phase, we have to oversee the progress of the project deliverables, and we have to control the scope. We should not allow the scope creep to happen, and we have to control the cost and the quality. And finally, in the closing phase, what we have to do is we have to make sure that it is officially completed and the project is officially closed. And also, these are the 5 process groups that we have identified, which these 47 things, 47 project management processes have divided. But in 47 project management processes can be divided into 10 knowledge areas as well, which we have identified in industry. Namely, we have communication, cost, human resources, integration, procurement, quality, risk, scope, stakeholder, and time. So if we go one by one, in communication, it is like spreading information among the team members and external, internal stakeholders. And we have to ensure that the information is exchanged continuously. And most importantly, we have to make sure that all the information what we shared is understood by everyone. In the cost management, it's about budgets, funding, spending allocation, timing, and these are also dependent on the time estimates from the time management. In the human resource management, it's about sourcing, hiring, assigning roles, professional development, forcing team spirit, and obviously managing the project team. Integration management, it defines, consolidate, and coordinate. Those are the 3 things on all the processes and the project management activities. Procurement management, it's about planning, budgeting, and purchasing resources. Quality management, so we have to define the success criteria of the project deliverables, and the quality is managed at every stage of the project, from planning to the continuous performance improvement. Risk management, it's about involving with the project, and we have to prepare for the unexpected risks. And then we have to manage them and how we are going to face those risks and everything. Scope management, we have to define these parameters for the scope, how we are going to manage them. And we have to ensure that the scope is well defined. And then we can use tools like RCI to make sure that the scope is well understood. RCI is Requirement Clarity Index. Stakeholder management, as we said earlier, we have to identify who are the stakeholders who are getting impacted from the project, and then we have to manage them, and we have to develop strategies on how we are going to manage the stakeholders. The last one, time management, it's about how we can complete the project on or before the deadline that we have committed to. And then let's move on to the Agile methodology. So this Agile methodology, it is also known as Agile management, Agile process management, or just Agile. And it refers to an iterative, incremental method of managing the design and build activities of engineering, information technology, and other business areas. The aim is to provide a new product or a service development in a highly flexible and interactive manner. And the Agile project management focuses on continuous improvement, scope flexibility, team input, delivering essential quality products. And also it focuses on transparency, inspection, and adoption. And moving on, it also focuses on people, communication, product, and flexibility, because the core of the Agile methodology was developed by 17 people in 2001 in written form. And the Agile manifesto of the software development put forth a groundbreaking mindset on delivering value and collaborating with the customers. So because of that, we have 4 main values in Agile, which is like comparisons. So we compare individuals and interactions over processes and tools, work in software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. And then we have a roadmap to the stages of the Agile methodology. We have about 7 stages of the roadmap. It's like vision, product roadmap, release planning, sprint planning, daily scrum, sprint review, and sprint retrospective. So if we go one by one, so vision is something that is identified by the product owner. And the product vision is the definition of what the product is and how it will support the company or the organization strategy and who will use the product. It's basically about an overview of the product. And on longer projects, we have to revisit the product vision at least once a year. In product roadmap, it is identified by the product owner again. The product roadmap is like a high-level view of the product requirements with loose time frame for when the development team have to develop these requirements. And when we are identifying the product requirements, we have to prioritize and roughly estimate the effort for each and every requirement that we have identified. And on longer projects, we have to revise the product roadmap at least twice a year. And then we have release planning. That is, the product owner creates a release plan again. The release plan identifies about the high-level timetable on how the releases of the working software is going to be. In an agile project, we'll have like many releases with the highest priority features launching first. And in a typical release, it includes like 3 to 5 sprints. And in creating the release plan, we have to create the release plan at the beginning of each release. And then moving on to the sprint planning, again, the product owner, the master, and the development team, they get together and then plan the sprints. And then it's also called iterations, the sprints, the iterations, and they can start creating the product within those sprints. The sprint planning sessions take place at the start of each sprint, where the Scrum team, which is the collection of the product owner, the master, and the development team, determines what requirements will be in the upcoming iteration. In the daily Scrum, during each sprint, the development team has daily meetings. In the daily meeting, we have to spend about like 15 minutes to discuss what is completed yesterday, what is have to be completed on today, and any roadblocks we have in the system, in the development. In the sprint review, the team holds the sprint review. In the sprint review, it is at the end of every sprint. We have to demonstrate the working product created during the sprint to the product stakeholders. And lastly, the sprint retrospective. The team holds a sprint retrospective. And this sprint retrospective is a meeting where the team discusses how the sprint went and the plans for the improvements for the next sprint. It's like a review. It's close to the sprint review as well. Like in the sprint review, we have to have the retrospective at the end of each and every sprint. So then we have 7 events in the profile in the Agile product development, which is same like the roadmap that we have discussed. So it is product planning, project planning, release planning, sprint planning, daily Scrum, sprint review, and sprint retrospect. I'm moving on to the Scrum methodology. So this is again a methodology which is coming under the Agile project management. It basically specializes in software delivery, and it provides a light process framework that embraces the iterative and incremental practices, helping the organizations deliver the working software more frequently. And Scrum process framework requires the use of development cycles called sprints. In here also we use sprints like from Agile, that is what we are using in Scrum. And in here I have put some advantages and disadvantages on using the Scrum methodology. So in the Scrum methodology, we focuses on customer satisfaction. We want to focus on the quality, and we have to provide, like we can provide better estimates in less time in Scrum methodology. We have fast, quick, and we can adapt to changes easily. Then we don't change the schedule in the sprint or the sprint. Like once the sprint is planned, it is planned. And in the Scrum, it is more logical to execute than the other methodologies. The disadvantages are it's very hard because the documentation is very less and it is very hard to track, and the teamwork is highly essential because the project will fail if the team members does not cooperate. Team has to do everything, and one most negative aspect of Scrum methodology is that bad products will be delivered sooner and the doomed projects will fail faster. And moving on to the Kanban methodology, Kanban is another framework for implementing Agile. It is based on teams' capacity to do work. So this was originated from factories of Toyota during 1940s and was originally a visual system of cards called Kanban and used by a department to signal that their team is ready to produce more when they have more raw materials. So the Kanban ensure the productivity by limiting multitasking, keeping work uninterrupted, urging the plan to go ahead, remaining focused, and encouraging to tackle the larger task first. And then only that day actually finishes the project. So I have put a table here to identify the differences between the Scrum methodology and the Kanban methodology. So the origin of the Scrum methodology, as I said before, it is software development, but Kanban, it's lean manufacturing. The ideology of the Scrum, it solves complex problems, but in Kanban, we use visuals. Basically, it's a visual board that we use in Kanban. I will go in a later slide and show you how a Kanban board looks like. And practices, we have sprint planning, sprint, daily Scrum, sprint review, sprint retrospective in Scrum. And in Kanban, we mostly visualize the flow of work. And as I said before, we limit the multitasking. And we manage the flow, make the process policies explicit, and implement feedback loops. And we always improve and experiment. That's the basic theory behind Kanban, improve and experiment. We have formal roles in Scrum called product owner, Scrum master, development team, but we don't have formal roles in Kanban. Metrics, we have velocity in Scrum, but in Kanban we have metrics like cycle time and throughput. So this is how a Kanban Kanban board would look like. So if you can see in here, we have priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. So this is like extended Kanban methodology board. So according to the prioritizations, we manage the board. So first the P1 has to go first, and then the P2 goes, and then the P3 goes. So this is how the Kanban boards looks like. And then we have scaled Agile framework. So let's talk about Agile, Scrum, and Scaled Agile framework in case we get confused over talking about these things. Agile is a way of thinking, a way of working, and it's a mindset. Scrum is a framework that is largely based on Agile principles and values. And Scaled Agile framework is a scaling framework that is used for implementing Agile in an enterprise level. So in Agile, Scaled Agile, we have 3 levels called portfolio, program, and team. This type of implementation is mainly used for the solutions that need hundreds of professionals to develop, deploy, and maintain software, because it is from an enterprise level. And this is like a systematic framework to facilitate the Agile implementation. The main intention is to provide the right amount of structure and the governance necessary to the team, the Agile team. So I have gone through some differentiations in Scrum and SAFe. SAFe, for instance, Scaled Agile Framework. So in Scrum, it deals with small teams, but in Scaled Agile, it is enterprise levels. So Scrum is adopted by Agile teams. In Scaled Agile, it is an extension of Scrum, but in a larger level. And the middle management plays no role in Scrum. Program and portfolio management are two important tiers in scale management. As I said, we have 3 levels in Scaled Agile Framework: portfolio, program, and team. So portfolio and program plays 2 important tiers. A basic construct is Scrum team, and we have Agile Release Train, ART, in Scaled Agile Framework. And Scrum misses out various essential aspects because it's aligned into smaller teams, and it does not have the full agility in them. But in Scaled Agile Framework, it is all possible features, aspects of the organization can be managed because it is focusing on enterprise levels. And then pros and cons. So pros, when we discuss, it is well documented, flexible, and lean underpinnings. It is well documented. Agile, as we discussed in Scrum, there were no documentation, but in here we have documentations. It is people-centric, and the Agile derivative with clear roles, artifacts, and events. We have 3-tier view, which is included in the portfolio, which is not included in other methodologies when compared with Scaled Agile Framework. And strong code quality when it is in the developing stage. Establishing scaling framework in marketplace. Constant refinement of Scaled Agile Framework knowledge base, because we can always refine what is there in the Scaled Agile. So in cons, when we talk about, it is mostly prescriptive. We have to always prescribe what we are doing. And then it is a heavy weight because we are dealing with the enterprise level, and it is not just one small team that we are handling. We have to handle all the people. So we have to manage portfolios, we have to manage programs, and then only we are managing teams. We have 3 tiers to manage. And this certification centric, we have to have certifications in Scaled Agile Framework so that everyone is certified to make sure that Scaled Agile Framework can be used in the project environments. So that is the end of the project management methodologies, focusing on the Agile methodologies. If you have any questions and clarifications that you need to know, so you can ask me. All right. So thank you everyone for being on the Tech Talk. Have a good day.